It's been 80 years since Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So, let's tackle one of the most controversial questions in military history. Did the atomic bombs really need to be dropped to end World War II? Agree or disagree? This debate is way more complicated than most people think. So, let me break down what actually happened in those dramatic final weeks of the war. By the summer of 1945, Japan was absolutely devastated. Their navy was gone, cities were being bombarded nightly, and they had lost most of their empire. However, even at that point, Japan's leaders were split into two camps. Some wanted to keep fighting until the bitter end, whilst others were secretly trying to negotiate peace through the Soviet Union. At the same time, the United States was planning Operation Downfall, a massive invasion of Japan scheduled for November of 1945. The casualties for the Allies, if they were to carry out the invasion, were estimated to be anywhere from 200,000 to over 1 million men, with Japanese deaths potentially in the tens of millions. And these weren't just wild guesses. These figures were based on the brutal fighting at places like Iwo Jima and Okinawa, as well as wargame simulations carried out by the US Navy. But here's what's fascinating about all this. The United States was actually intercepting Japanese diplomatic messages this whole time. They knew Japan was trying to get the Soviets to mediate a peace deal. What's the problem with that, you might ask? Well, Japan wanted a conditional surrender that allowed it to keep its emperor and avoid occupation. The United States, however, wanted nothing short of unconditional surrender, period. But then, everything changed in the course of a single week. On August the 6th, Hiroshima happened. On August the 8th, the Soviet Union declared war and invaded Manchuria. On August the 9th, Nagasaki happened. By August 15th, Emperor Hirohito announced the surrender of Japan. So what really made Japan surrender? The reality is that we'll never know for sure if the bombs were necessary. Would Japan have surrendered anyways? Perhaps, but probably not unconditionally, and definitely not quickly. What we do know is this. It is true that those bombs killed over 200,000 people, mostly civilians. But it is also true that Operation Downfall could have killed millions more on both sides. We're stuck between a rock and a hard place. This is why the atomic bombings remain one of history's most morally controversial decisions. They ended the deadliest war in human history, but at what cost? So, do I agree or disagree? I can agree that the atomic bombings were useful in accelerating the end of the war, but to say they were absolutely necessary to end it, I would have to disagree with that one.